Hello! This is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, the homeland of the Correllian tradition. And welcome to Midday with Reverend Don. And every day I come on here to have a lovely lunchtime talk with you. And I look forward to it each day. I hope you do as well. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, all you have to do is type in your questions or comments on whatever platform you happen to be watching on, and they'll appear here in my chat room and we can talk directly. And hello to Mike in the chat room. Good to see you, Mike. And I quite enjoy this time each day. I love you all. I love spending time with you. And there's no knowing where the conversation is going to end up. Yesterday, it kind of veered all over the place. And I suspect today may follow that in some ways as well. Hello, Diane in the chat room. It's good to see you. Hello, Renee in the chat room. It's good to see you. And I guess we'll see what we end up talking about. Hello, Mary in the chat room. Good to see you. This Saturday evening, I am doing an event at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Hello to Deb in the chat room. Good to see you, Deb. An evening with the Correllian ancestors on my Patreon at revdonlewis.com. It's open to all Patreons. And if you would like to attend, you can join my Patreon easily at revdonlewis.com. And it's going to be a night of stories about our Correllian ancestors and channeling as well. And hello to Anna in the chat room. Hello, Joanne in the chat room. Good to see you, Joanne. Joanne says, we love you too. Thank you, Joanne. I really appreciate that. It's lovely to get to spend this time with people. And you know, I have to say, I'm a believer in the idea that we're in this world to learn. But what we learn is largely through our interactions with other people. And hello to Alan in the chat room. Good to see you, Alan. When we leave this life, what we take with us, I think, are in a lot of ways primarily the experiences we've had with others. And so these experiences I have with you, the experiences I've had with so many people throughout all these many years that I've been working, these are the things that truly make life worthwhile. Hello to Magical Mermaid in the chat room. Hello to Diggs. BTW7 in the chat room. And it's good to see you all. And you know, I've written extensively about the nature of incarnation, the nature of the soul, and the nature of karma, and about things like the Wiccan Reed and what it means from a Correllian perspective, which isn't necessarily the same thing that people from certain other perspectives would say. Since I broached that subject, I'll just give you the simple version that we look at the Wiccan Reed as being a prohibition of unprovoked or egregious damage. It's always best to solve your situations in the easiest and most peaceful way possible. And hello to Matthew in the chat room. Good to see you, Matthew. But you know, defending yourself is not a violation of the Wiccan Reed. The Wiccan Reed, for those who are not familiar, is variations on the saying, do as you will, but harm not. But some people take that word harm far beyond its normal understanding. We do not. We say that you must understand the word harm as it would be normally understood in conversation without elaborating on it. And if you do that, it's very sensible advice to live by. It's the same thing that your mother probably told you before sending you to kindergarten. Don't beat up. Don't be selfish. Don't beat up on other children. Don't start fights. But it does not extend to not defending yourself. It does not mean you should be a doormat, and it also doesn't mean that. Well, for example, if there's a deadly bacteria or a deadly virus that's threatening your life, it doesn't mean that you should not take action against that. Of course you should. That is not what no harm actually means, at least not an ordinary understanding of those words. So that's our understanding of that. But on the subject of karma, And Mary says, I'm so happy that our paths crossed. Oh, thank you, Mary. And I continue to learn from you and love you. Thank you, Mary. I love you too. I love you all. I understand karma. The Correllian understanding of karma is similar to the Buddhist understanding of karma. Not identical necessarily, but similar. And that is that karma is attachment. And how do you free yourself from karma? Well, it isn't necessarily from reliving the situation. It can also be anything that allows you to disattach from the attachment, which is why we do shadow work, why we do karmic disentanglement. These things can also help us, not just reliving situations. However, as a rule, we do relive situations many times and often from many different angles to learn all the lessons in that attachment. But it's not the only way things can be done. And this is in the different religions that venerate the concept of karma, which most traditionally include Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism. There are different ways of looking at karma, but all of these have more than one way of dealing with it. Karma has never been a simple-minded concept of tit for tat. It's always been rather deeper than that. And of course, we have our everyday understanding that's easily explained, but when we actually start to look at it, it's a very deep subject. As are all of these subjects. You know, one of the things I often say is that to harm you, because a lot of people worry about things like black magic, they worry about entities, they worry about this or that or the other thing. To harm you, it has to be invited in. But that doesn't mean consciously. I think perhaps the most accessible explanation of what I mean is the dragon Smaug from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The dragon was impervious, completely impervious, except for one single place on its underbelly where a scale had fallen off. That was an invitation in, even though the dragon was not aware that it existed. And that's what brought the dragon down. So when I say that, I will loosely phrase this, that evil must be invited in. We're not talking about being conscious of inviting something in or even intentionally doing so. What we mean is leaving yourself open to that negativity. If your expectation is for something to go wrong, you're leaving yourself open, you're inviting it in. That's why we must work with our expectations through shadow work. If you have such fear of it that you're obsessing over that fear, you're inviting it in. That's why we need to work with resolving our fears through shadow work. You know, a lot of people get terribly upset about the Ouija board. My attitude toward the Ouija board is it's a piece of cardboard with a sticker on it. There's nothing that thing's going to be able to do in and of itself to hurt anyone. Do people occasionally have spooky experiences with it? Yes. And if you ask them and they're honest, they'll usually admit they were looking for them. But that's asking for it to come to you. The one I most remember comes from that famous telepathic media show, Ouija board, harmless toy or gateway to hell, where Howard Hyam and I debated the merits of the Ouija board. And he tried to show that it was a terrible thing by telling the story of a group of drunken frat boys who took their Ouija board to a graveyard looking for a spooky experience and then were upset when they got one. Of course they got one. They were successful in their goal. Was it real? I don't know that I'd even say that it was. That's not what you do with a Ouija board. It's a psychic tool. You use it like any other. You use the protections you would use with any psychic tool. You clear and ground your energy. You do all those things, you'll be fine. Is it a valuable tool? Not especially. It can be helpful in learning clairvoyance. That's how I was exposed to it, and I used it that way extensively, just long enough to learn clairvoyance. And then the ancestors refused to use it any further because they thought it was I believe the word they used was tedious, and in fact it is. Although for people who like to see things spelled out in front of them, so to speak, it does have that value. And hello to Lori Jo in the chat room. Good to see you, Lori Jo. And Lori Jo says, it's only through knowing you that I discover my true self. Community is essential. Thank you, Lori Jo. That's so sweet of you to say, and I appreciate it very much. You know, I have to say, certain things that have happened in the last few months have made me ask myself if the things I've done over these 44 years of my spiritual career, actually more than that, were really worthwhile. Did I really touch people? Did I really get through to people? And it's things like this that remind me that yes, I did. There are certain people who made clear that the only thing they were interested in was power, and I did not see that in them. I see it now, and I'm very disappointed in them. I'm even ashamed of them, but I'm also disappointed in myself for having, and I hate to say it, but having seen only the good in them, and there was good in them. But you know, I looked at it with rose-colored glasses, I guess. Although it is true that sometimes when a person comes to an initiation or an elevation, it makes changes, and they aren't the same as they were before. So possibly it wasn't there to be seen. But when I see that I have touched so many people, it offsets that, and I feel better. But it's very jarring when someone you truly trusted betrays you, disappoints you. And betrayal is more the word than disappointment. And you know, all I can say is that I'm working with the people who matter, the people who appreciate what I'm doing, the people who do feel a benefit from it, and I'm happy to be doing that. And the people who only wanted to get something from me, well, they got what they wanted, more power to them, but they have no power over me. I will simply keep doing the next right thing. You know, I tried to say, you know, you never really have power over people. If you think you do, you're wrong. And you know, to be a bit cliche, but Princess Leia was right when she said, the tighter you close your fist, the more sand runs through your fingers. Unless somehow you're in a position to force people to deal with you, any power you have is the power that they give you. And to forget that is a tragic mistake. It's something I never forgot. And for those of you who are watching who are in positions of authority, please remember this. If you are heading a group, if you're heading an organization, if you're a teacher, if you're in any position where people are listening to you and working with you and, quote, following you, understand they're doing it by choice. They can go somewhere else any day. Understand they're giving you a gift by working with you. And for you to think that you own them is an obscenity. And, you know, people in the end vote with their feet. And Magical Mermaid says, you know, most good people try to see people in the best light. I've always believed that. And she says, often when we do, we get disappointed. And unfortunately, that's true. This isn't the first time I've ever been disappointed in anyone. It's just perhaps the most unexpected and the extremity of it. I mean, I was not even out of the hospital. I didn't even really have the prognosis yet. And the knives are in my back. And I did not expect that from people whose careers I had nurtured, from people I had taught, from people I'd spent years promoting. I wasn't entirely surprised that they would want to do their own thing, but I wasn't expecting that. And again, I'm deeply disappointed in those primarily two people. And you know, I really should bear in mind it's two people. It's not a large cadre of people. It's just two of the people I thought were closest to me. But those other people closest to me who supported me, I'm very grateful for them. I'm very grateful to Sir Edward, who totally supported me through all of that. To Sir Laurie Blackman and Sir Chad, who totally supported me, and to Sir Jason, my beloved nephew, who has been a huge support, and to all of you who have supported me. There are so many people who supported me, made clear that they did appreciate the things I've done. And, for that, I thank you all. But speaking of leadership, when you're in that position of leadership, try always to see the good in people. It would be a sad day if this experience on my part stopped me or anyone else from looking for the good in people. But do always remember that there may be another side and watch for it. And realize you may be deliberately not seeing it because you like the person. Magical Mermaid says, sometimes you can even find it in your own family, though. And actually, these people were considered family members, though I consider neither of them such now. That's also part of why I was so surprised. And Amanda says, you've done more good than you know. Thank you, Amanda. I truly appreciate that. And Amanda says, I have learned so much from you. Thank you, Amanda. I'm very happy for that. And I love you, Amanda. And, I remember getting to meet you in person, and I could feel such good energy from you. And I will always remember that first meeting so many years ago now. And there have been so many people I've met. And when you're in a position of leadership, there are things that are forced on you as well as things you choose, because you have to follow rules. You cannot be arbitrary. And it does not matter if something somewhere says you have total power. If you abuse that, people will walk away from you, and they should. Anything you do should be well reasoned. If for some reason you need to take an unpleasant action, you should have concrete reasons, and you should enumerate them, or you should not do it. In all the years that I was Chancellor of the Corellian tradition, or all the years that I have been First Priest, which I still am, retired in office, but in the years I was Chancellor, never did I expel anyone from the Corellian tradition who had not violated a serious rule, and almost always after at least 2 years of trying to resolve the situation. And I'm very pleased to say that many of those situations were resolved because we tried. And when you're in a position of leadership, I feel you have that obligation. And Amanda says, oh my goodness, you just made me cry in a good way. And that really means a lot. I'm so glad for that, Amanda. You're a lovely person. And I've often been asked, because I even in the sense that I'm now retired in office, but I'm still in office. And there are currently 4 members of the Corellian First Priesthood: myself, Lady Crystal, and Sir Phoenix Coffin Williams, and Lady Stephanie. I should say Lord Phoenix Coffin Williams. As First Priest, you do not use Sir, because you are a Fonsinorum. But all 4 of us are in office. But as a person who was in office such a long time, this is my 44th year, I've often been asked about leadership, and these are the things that I would say. It is not about your ego. You certainly will get your ego stroked, whether you want it stroked or not, but it's not about that. And you have to be very careful not to listen when people are overly stroking your ego, and to remember, in the words of the Romans, remember thou art mortal. I once had the great pleasure of interviewing Lady Olivia Robertson of the Fellowship of Isis. In fact, I interviewed her numerous times, but the one I'm referring to, I brought this subject up to her because the members of the Fellowship of Isis absolutely revered Lady Olivia, including myself. some even to the point of regarding her as they might an incarnate goddess. And I asked her how she felt about that and how she dealt with it. And her answer was, first, it was an oh my goodness reaction, but she said her family kept her humble and prevented her from believing any such nonsense, which I thought was a wonderful answer. And you have to remember when you're in a position of leadership, it's wonderful when you have done so well that people revere you. But again, you must remember thou art mortal. You must remember they are there by choice. They're giving you a gift in listening to you. You cannot command it. And it doesn't matter if you have people saying that you can. Go ahead and try to command it. See what happens. And hello to Julia in the chat room. And Julia says, good evening, Reverend Don. You have a very calming way about you. Thank you, Julia. And Magical Mermaid says, many people have forgot the concept of tender loving care. And, you know, if you look at people in positions of leadership today, in so many cases, that's so true. And it sometimes seems like people today are taking the idea of being in positions of leadership as an excuse to show their worst selves. That is so sad because it builds a horrible reaction. But when you're in that position of leadership, you need to pick your battles. You need to remember that what you do affects everyone in your organization. That every battle, whether you win or lose, can become a disaster for everyone. You should avoid them at all costs if you can. When people have served you or your organization for decades, you should have appreciation for that. I don't know that I have ever separated myself from someone who could be said to have served the tradition for decades. But there were a few who had served for many years. And again, it was because they could not be worked with, and almost always after 2 or more years of trying, because it's always a wrenching move. It's never a good move. And you know, I've often made the comment privately, not so often publicly, but I probably have made it publicly before, that I can deal with treachery more easily than stupidity. Because if someone's being treacherous, at least they may still be being logical. But if someone's just stupid, it's very hard to know what stupid thing they'll do next. And when they're both treacherous and stupid, you just got to shake your head. And Deb says, there have been some in leadership who have made me feel uneasy. I've discovered that uneasy has been founded. And sadly, I have to agree, yeah. And it's sad when that happens. And Julia says you can't argue with stupid. And unfortunately, that's true because it can't hear anything but itself. A person who is being treacherous at least has a goal other than their ego. And maybe you can work with that. Not always, it depends how treacherous they're being. But when they're when they're so stupid that they can only hear their echo chamber, you have a very difficult problem. And Alan says, authority is a gift we give to others. This is so true. And you know, there is authority that has an objective reality, the authority of the law, the authority of the police, the authority of our elected politicians. But because we elect them, that is still a gift we give them. But it's not a gift we give in the moment. But in our groups we belong to by choice, the churches we belong to, the temples we belong to, the organizations we belong to, that we can leave anytime we want. Authority is a gift. Listening to those people in positions of authority, that's your gift to them, and they need to remember it. And hello to Maggie in the chat room. It's good to see you, Maggie. Maggie says, I have found that if you're not authentically pleasing, actually, she says, I found if you're not aesthetically pleasing, you're pushed to the side. I think it depends who you're dealing with. But I would say if what you mean to say is if you're not authentically pleasing, you're pushed to the side, I think often that happens. And I think we've all known that self-important person that no one is willing to deal with. Anna says it's the nature of envy. Psychoanalysts can help us to understand these shadow feelings and betrayals. People are naturally aggressive, sadly, but should know better. Yeah. And this is, again, why we have shadow work. And yes, Maggie did mean authentically. And yes, if you're not authentic, people will see it. If you're just a tin-plated dictator trying to have authority over them, they know that. If you're just there to stroke your ego, you might fool them for a little while, but not for 44 years. You're not. Not for 1 or 2 years. You're not. They will see through it, and they will leave. And I always strove to be diplomatic and to always find a diplomatic solution before trying anything else. And this is one reason. I understood that everyone here is here by choice. That having the ability to be first priest of the Correllian tradition and have that mean more than just me as an individual was a privilege that I was given, a gift I was given by those people who chose to be members of this tradition, who chose to bear my lineage and my family's lineage. Hello to Ravenwolf in the chat room. It's good to see you, Ravenwolf. When you forget it's a privilege, frankly, you deserve to lose it. I just worry about the collateral damage as that happens. But I have my own path that I am on, and that collateral damage doesn't involve me. So I regret to see people doing such irresponsible things, such, in my opinion, immoral things that I have seen certain people doing. And I feel they're heading for disaster, but I warned them that they were heading for disaster. And if disaster now overtakes them, it's because they would not listen to me. For all of the years that I spent seeing the good in them and nurturing their careers. And there's nothing I can do that I have not already done. So thank you for listening to me whine about this. But I think we've discussed some very important things about leadership and also about incarnation and karma today. And all of these things tie back to that and to what it is to be a good leader, to what you need to think of when you're in that position of leadership. And even doing a broadcast like this is a position of leadership. Being an online influencer is a position of leadership. You need to approach it responsibly. You need to think about what you're doing and not behave like a villain in a cheap novel. Behave like the hero in the cheap novel. It's much more successful in the long. So thank you for joining me. And I see we've come to the end of our half hour. So let us close with our prayer as we always do. And thank you so much for being here. I love you all. I love this time spent with you. I love getting to actually talk to you. And I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we ask you to be with us and to guide us as we go forward and to guide the events of this world to the best possible outcomes for everyone. Help us to make the right decisions, to take the right actions that are the best benefit for the most people, and to build a better world as we go forward. And When on those occasions we see we have made mistakes, well, help us to do the next right thing, if perhaps we missed the last right thing. And help us always to strive to be better in the next thing we do. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved ancestors, beloved Father God, we thank you with great love and with respect. Knowing you're always with us, but from respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence. I love you all. And may you be blessed now and always, and I will see you tomorrow.